February 13th, 1950, the dawn of the Cold War. Off the west coast of Canada, U.S. Air Force bomber 075 is on a top-secret mission. Deep inside the bomb bay, weaponeer Ted Schreier is arming a Mark IV nuclear weapon when the mission goes terribly wrong.
Captain, we got a fire on one. Shut down to submarine number 1. Number 2's on fire. There's a 4-foot flame coming out of that thing. Shut down engine number 2. Roger. Shutting down 2.
Without warning, 2 of its 6 engines erupt in flames. Inside the bomb bay, weaponeer Schreier struggles to safe the weapon as the B-36 begins to plummet from the sky. Moments later, the bomber suffers a crippling blow as a 3rd engine is engulfed in flames.
We have 3 engines out.
As 075 enters restricted airspace over Canada, the pilot orders his crew of 16 to prepare to abandon the crippled bomber.
Crew 17, fires on engines 1, 3, and 5. Ditching. Look for survivors of wreckage near Princess Royal Island.
Just before midnight, the nuclear bomber disappears from the radar screen.
I can't be sure exactly what happened to the bomb, but a great effort was made to destroy bomb bay number 1 where it was originally held. Everything was blown up. What wasn't incinerated was melted into tiny pools of metal. Everything is destroyed. The evidence is gone now.
In the weeks following the expedition, John Clearwater finds the person who illegally removed the birdcage from the crash site in 1998. Within days of Clearwater's discovery, the U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency recovers the container for transporting the bomb's plutonium core from a treasure hunter in the eastern United States. Tasked with the role of safeguarding the U.S. from weapons of mass destruction, the agency releases no official report on the incident.
If this is just an empty container, why the continued secrecy? We may never know if there was a core inside this birdcage because the Air Force and U.S. government have refused comment and shut the door on this case.
Forensic analysis of the bones recovered by Dirk Scepter turn out not to be human. But as the door begins to close on his theory that weaponeer Schreier may have died on the mountain, some intriguing new evidence arises. He uncovers military and civilian reports from Canadian and U.S. sources that document a series of radio transmissions. Transmissions he believes were sent by someone who stayed on board 075 after the rest of the crew bailed out.
This aircraft changed 180 degrees direction. It gained at least 3,000 feet in elevation. It flew over mountain ranges. Somebody was at the controls of this aircraft.
Armed with new evidence, eyewitness reports, and U.S. Air Force documents, the team has reconstructed what they believe happened that winter's night in February of 1950.
From the ground on Princess Royal Island, the crew looks up and sees the plane turn around 180 degrees and fly back north. The last person to see the plane was Reverend Kinley in New Ianche at about 2 o'clock in the morning. From here, the plane may have tried to fly south into an abandoned airstrip on the Skeena River, possibly couldn't put in because of bad weather, eventually crashing to the north. When you add up the length of this route with a minimum flying speed of 150 miles an hour, what do you get? 3 hours, exactly the same duration as the radio transmissions.
If he stayed on board, what was he trying to save? What was worth risking his life? Certainly not the aircraft. There must have been something else.
Is it possible that the one crew member responsible for the mission's nuclear weapon tried to save the crippled bomber?
There's only one reason for Captain Schreier to remain on board. For whatever reason, they couldn't drop the weapon. So, to prevent a radiological disaster, he takes the plane and turns it around and heads back to Alaska.
Schreier makes a final course change, setting his compass to 075 degrees, a heading that will take him directly into northern BC and the towering Kispiox Mountains.
By this time, he's only 50 miles from the Alaska border. For some reason, he can no longer keep the plane in the air. The only thing that's left for him to do is to look for the best place to make an emergency landing.
At 6 minutes to 3, Schreier sends one last voice transmission.
This is Spectre 36, aircraft number 2075.
Just before 3 a.m., 075's radio goes silent. The bomber will remain here, undetected, for the next 4 years.
When the U.S. Special Operations Team dropped all these explosives and supplies in there in 1954, why did they include a Geiger counter if they want us to believe that the bomb had been dropped over the ocean?
There may really have been a live atomic weapon sitting up in the mountains in British Columbia, unknown and untouched for 4 years.
They knew when the aircraft crashed, the bomb was on board. When the team goes in, their mission is not to blow up the aircraft. Their mission is threefold. To recover the core, they took the remains of Captain Schreier and they blew up the bomb and were gone.
But John Clearwater suggests there may be another, far more frightening possibility.
Maybe the simplest explanation for all the secrecy is that the crew of 075 dropped their Mark IV and there was a nuclear explosion out over the Pacific Ocean. And no one would have ever known that it happened.
Although 5 of 075's crew are never found, 2 years after the plane disappeared, a fisherman recovers the remains of a human foot near Princess Royal Island. In 2002, the bones are exhumed from their military grave. The Schreiers, along with the families of the other missing men, are asked to provide blood samples. But after forensic analysis of the remains, the U.S. military reports they are unable to extract the DNA needed for identification. Within months of the mishap, many of 075's crew, including co-pilot Ray Whitfield, leave the Air Force. Among those who stay in the service are gunner Dick Thrasher and pilot Harold Barry. A year after their harrowing experience aboard Bomber 075, they are reunited on another training mission.
Barry said, "Is Thrasher going with us?" Well, I answered. I said, "Yes, Thrasher is going. This is his crew. He flies when they fly." Barry said, "We're bound to have trouble." That's the last words I heard out of Barry.
Hours later, Captain Barry is killed when a fighter plane crashes into the cockpit of his B-36. As the bomber disintegrates in midair, Dick Thrasher manages to jump clear before it smashes into the Oklahoma countryside.
It seemed like there was something wrong with Barry and I flying together because we always had trouble.
By the end of the 50s, the arms race claims the B-36. True to its namesake, the Peacemaker is retired without ever dropping a single bomb in combat. Just 3 years after it entered service, the Mark IV is removed from the U.S. inventory and replaced by a host of more powerful nuclear weapons. Although 075's Mark IV is classified by the Pentagon as its first broken arrow, it's by no means the last. 9 months later, another crippled bomber detonates a Mark IV in a non-nuclear explosion near the town of Rimouski, Quebec. 3 decades will pass before the U.S. admits to losing another 60 nuclear weapons in major accidents around the globe. Now a national heritage site, the looting of the wreckage of 075 continues, perpetuating rumors about the recovery of human remains and Ted Schreier's dog tags.
For me, more than 50 years of secrecy, misdirection, and misinformation by the Pentagon can mean only one thing. Something happened that night. There's some dark secret that they don't want anyone to know about.
For the families of 075's crew, they are left with only memories and more unanswered questions.
I don't know why all the secrecy. What could be so important? It seems like a cover-up when the families are not told what happened. What harm would it do to open the books and supply us with answers to the questions of what really happened 50 years ago?
Like the remains of Bomber 075 concealed under deep winter snows, the truth about what happened that night to her missing crew and the world's first lost nuclear weapon may remain hidden forever.